Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video we're going to be going over all the major events that happened this weekend, and there wasn't actually any A tiers or higher, but there was a couple B tiers which we'll be going over, which was tamasuma, kyokkan, I believe that's how you say that, number 2, you had Gen 1 and Invasion, and then for smaller tournaments like C tier size you had Smash Contest Cactus, which was won by Tarek, so shout out to him for that. Ega Boost was won by Skyja, he's been on a tear recently, got wins on MK Big Boss, and Jared is King won as well. They did Game 10 Grand Finals, him and MK Big Boss, really impressive there. You have Peanut winning his own tournament over Anathema, and shoutouts to Moxie for getting third place with Meta Knight. I haven't really seen her Meta Knight ton. I know she's been working on it a bit, and I think the last major she went to, it was mainly Meta Knight, but pretty interesting to see it out here in full force, doing very well, getting a win over Anathema. And then finally you have Failsafe, which was won by Zomba, second place by DeBuzz, had another really good grand final set. Guy got third as well. We know he's a really talented player from Tri-State that's been making waves, so huge shout-outs to him for that. If there's any players from those tournaments or other tournaments that I just didn't cover, please let me know down below, but we're going to be focusing on the big 3 B tiers from this weekend. The first tournament we're going to be taking a look at is going to be Tamasuma. In 13th place, you had Sayadu, I believe that's how you say it, Rakuya, Phil, and Joy 1 or Geo 1. Again, not super familiar with their pronunciation. In 9th place, you have Obi, Su, Miles, and Umeki. 7th place, you had Kananabe and Rizuyasu. 5th place, you have Cosmos and Gak. 4th place, Omatsu. 3rd place, Now. 2nd place, T. And 1st place, Akla. We're doing this one first just because of all the tournaments. This one was fairly typical. You had Akla winning the whole thing. You had T in 2nd place. I will say, Gak gave Akla a very good showing. They had a game 5 game, so Zeta Bros did very well this tournament. Cosmos with another 5th place at a pretty stacked Japanese tournament. I mean, the last one he got 5th place at was a major same place here. He did lose to T, which is a bracket demon of his, though it was game 5, so shouts to Cosmos for making that close. And then he lost to Omatsu in the losers bracket. I'm not sure that's a great matchup for Aegis, but I imagine the offstage game is horrendous, so I could definitely see Cosmos struggling there, especially if he doesn't know the matchup super well. But he's being a consistent threat in Japan, but we will see later on in the video where he does underperform a little bit. You also have Now, who had a monstrous losers run at this tournament. After he lost to Omatsu fairly early on, he was able to get wins on Shogun, Rakuya, Miles, Kananabe, Gakt, Omatsu in the run back before losing to T, and he was using a surprising amount of Cloud. Like, I'm usually looking at now, it's like, yeah, this is just the Mario guy. He's a Mario player coming up from Japan, potentially the best one in the world, but he's been using a lot of Cloud in this tournament, and it's had great success with him. I'm curious to see, does he pivot more towards Cloud? Is it going to be a nice secondary combination, which I hope it is, because his Mario is still incredibly good. And also shoutouts to Omatsu, another really good result for him. Actually, like, okay, maybe I am the best Miniman in Japan. I think Proto's undeniably, like, the best player, but it's kind of like when Leo was playing Corn. It's like, okay, is Shattuck the best Corn or is Leo the best Corn? It's going to be kind of that conversation now with Omatsu because he's been having some very strong results. Now let's talk about our top 2 of Aquila and T, and it's pretty typical that they did this well. Nothing really super challenging along the way. I mentioned Aquila with Gakt, that's probably the closest he got. We got wins on Shion, Omatsu, Gakt, and T twice. And then you have T, who's also just looking very good. Got wins on Obi, Umeki, Cosmos, and then in the loser side of bracket, did pick up a nice win on. Now, these guys are just insane. We haven't seen a ton from T in 2023, though. What we have seen haven't really been to his standards. We saw him get second at Umabora, which, makes sense. Kicks off the year strong. Ninth at Genesis, also pretty good. Then he does have a bit of an underperformance at Maysuma top 11, where he gets 17th. Again, not the end of the world, only losing to Osimo and Mio, but not a great, or Neo rather, but not a great placement from him. But it's also like, he's been to 3 tournaments this year, and one of them was 17th at a major. Like, it's not the end of the world. So he has a nice bounce back here with a 2nd place. And then you have Aquila, who at the end of the day is just Aquila in contention right now for number 1 in the world. I'd say the person with the strongest arguments to be number 1, and this is only another reason to put him at that top spot. The next tournament we're going to be looking at is Gen 1.1. Again, if there's any players that are left out and you just want me to talk about them, please let me know down below. But for 13th place here, we had Matera, Tamaigo, I believe that's how you say that, Aka, and Terakatori. I don't know how he gets the results he does with the character, but it's kind of unreal. 9th place, you have Umeki, again, Huto, Takai, and Raito. 7th place, you have Kept and Yoshi. 5th place, you have Hikaru and Noi. 4th place, you have Mensuko. 3rd place, Basariman. 2nd place, Yama. And 1st place was Masa. Now, let's talk about Masa right away because I gotta say, it is good to see him back. We haven't seen a ton from him in 2023, especially considering how hot the end to his 2022 season was. He has a 33rd at Umabora, 33rd at Heroes, which is like really not great, but he does have a win at a weekly, and now he has a massive win here with wins on players like Ken, Kept, Monzuko, and 2 wins on Yama, and he was doing it fairly dominantly. Like he 3-0'd Ken. And that's not the only underperformances at this tournament, because I also got to talk about Cosmos and Shuton, who both bow out extremely early. You have Cosmos bowing out as early as 49th and Shutone at 33rd, which is pretty crazy. These guys are known for being super consistent, at least for Shutone. He just won Kowloon, but he fell fairly early on to TKM, which has been a player that has just been getting massive upsets. It feels like TKM just has so many wins on amazing players, including Leo, by the way, which is pretty crazy. Like a while ago, but still, he has a Leo win. And then in the loser side of bracket, he falls to Umeki, which is just pretty unfortunate that you have to fight Umeki that early. And as for Cosmos in the loser side of bracket, he falls to Neo. Clearly, he has like a problem with Corrin. He just kind of gets whopped by Corrin's. Static's been a problem for him. Maybe he kind of has to go back to the character to find out how to deal with that matchup. But I digress. In the loser side, an even bigger upset. Round 1, he loses to Ikeria. So all things considered, not a bad loser's run from Cosmos. He just had to fight some pretty tough opponents. He did get the run back as well. But huge shoutouts to Ikeria. I believe that's how you say that. That's like the biggest upset of the tournament. We also got to talk about Yama and his character choice, because this weekend he got wins on Keisha, Huto, Noi, lost to Masa in winners finals, then beat Passeriman in losers finals, and then lost to Masa again in the grand finals. And from what I saw of Yama, it was essentially only Steve. He did try Roy in grand finals, but it didn't really work out. But for when he was winning, it was basically only Steve, which is very interesting. We went from Akla being like the only real Steve player in Japan to having a couple Steves sneak into the top, even like 16 area. You have Mia now, who is a really strong secondary Steve, and now you have Yama with this incredibly strong secondary Steve. Getting second here is really strong. So we're finally starting to see Japan kind of filling up with all the Steve players, because obviously they've had the GOAT Steve for a really long time. But besides that, it's been basically radio silence. So really interesting to see how this affects the meta. Maybe we're going to see more characters like Cloud to be kind of countering that. We kind of already are. Like, with Now, we saw Cloud. You have Yoshi doing pretty good at these tournaments as well. So pretty interesting how the meta is just shifting. And I got to give a shout out to Yama, because a really impressive run from him. And the final player that I want to talk about is going to be Hikaru, just because his losers run was so impressive. He lost to Raito fairly on, which is like huge shout outs to Raito for being back in the game. He has had a massive bounce back lately, which is always nice to see some of the old guard doing well, especially with a character like Duck Hunt, interesting character in the meta. But I digress. Hikaru got wins on Kamisuke, Shiki, Chicken, Aka, Huto, Yoshi, before losing to Manzuko, a Toon Link player. Toon Link doing crazy well in Japan. A couple Toon Links doing really well, not just Sigma that I feel like most people are aware of, but shouts to Manzuko. But I digress. Hikaru is crazy. This is such a strong loser run after losing fairly early on. And he's doing it with mainly DK and Roy. It's a character combination that will never make sense in my mind, but he makes it work so consistently that you gotta think, okay, maybe other people have to start trying this. And our final tournament is going to be Invasion. Not in Japan this time. We are going to be going over to Europe for this one. And this one had basically all of Europe's top talent. Not too many Vaders, unfortunately. You had SBF, Nighthawks, Cool Kings, and Jezo getting 13th. Shouts to Cool Kings doing it with Link. You always got to point that out. In 9th place, you have Neroz, Curry Governor, the Schmixtape, and Maze Bean. Shouts to Schmixtape as well. Really strong player as well. One of the best tags in the game. 7th place, you have Lancelot and Pelly. 5th place, Siski and Streaks. 4th place, Andres FN. 3rd place, Gluto again, 2nd place Lugi, and 1st place Bloom. The first player I want to take a look at is going to be Streaks, who after losing to Lugi fairly early on got wins on Los Polos Hermanos, the best player in the world as far as I know, SBF, Maze Beans, as well as once he was into top 8, getting a nice win on Pelly before unfortunately losing to Bloom. He lost to 1st and 2nd. Streaks is a really strong player, and Fox, it feels like they often get undershadowed because of how good Light is, but Passeriman did really well this weekend, though he did use a combination of Fox Diddy Kong, which is pretty interesting. I feel like Japan Diddy Kong is just becoming much more prevalent, especially as a secondary, and the character is very high maintenance, so I'm really curious to see how people work out with that. But back to Streaks, he did really well this weekend. Again, you don't see Fox having a ton of success out of Light because the character is fairly difficult at the top level, but Streaks was looking very impressive this weekend. Beat a couple of Steves as well, which is one of Fox's more tough matchups, so huge shouts to him for that. I also want to give shoutouts to Andres FN for getting 4th place at another big EU tournament. He got wins on Octave, FSBF, and then he lost to Lugi in winner's side of bracket, but he was able to get a win on Neroz with Terry. Again, he's juggling between Kazuya, between Terry, between Ryu. It's really interesting. Then he gets wins in Lancelot and Siski. Siski win is especially huge in top 8, doing with Ryu. Finally, we have someone contending Osmo for the best Ryu in the world, because Ryu, again, I still think Ryu is much better than Ken, but you see more Kens out there. It's really just Osmo. Sometimes Vendetta does pretty well in an event, but now you have Andres with this combination of the FGC characters doing very well, and I really want to see him travel because I think he could cause some serious damage out of region. Also, really quickly, I want to give shoutouts to Kendrick Almar, who got 17th place with Young Link. Not for any reason in particular, I just really like his tag. So our top 3 is essentially the same as Shonen War in Bloom and Gluto, but our newest addition is going to be Luigi, not because he wasn't at Shonen War, he actually ended up getting 13th place there, a little bit of an underperformance, but Luigi's just kind of a volatile character, sometimes you're going to lose super hard, so here has an incredible bounce back, getting wins on Lighto, Streaks, Andres FN, and he gets a win on Bloom and Gluto, which is really impressive. Does lose to Bloom in the grand finals 3-0 and then 3-2 in the reset, but still looked very impressive here. Again, Luigi is one of EU's top threats, like definitely a top 5 player in EU. I don't know what the exact top 5 would be, but it'd probably be some order of like Gluto, Bloom, Siski, or Darren Flinley in there. You have Luigi in there at this point. I think Andres FN has arguments. I think Tarek has arguments. I think Mr. R has arguments. There's a couple more people you could probably slot into there, but the EU top 5 is looking incredible right now, like the best it has ever looked by far. You have 2 top 10 caliber players, you have a couple top 30 caliber players, and there's also a bunch of people that could definitely break into that highest caliber. Another third place for Gluttony isn't a huge surprise at this point. He has been consistently underperforming in Europe, but at least when he does underperform, it isn't by something crazy. It's like he got third place, losing to second and first, still getting a win on Siski along the way. Like, it's definitely not the end of the world, but for the top 10 caliber player that we expect him to be and to perform at every tournament he goes to, is a little bit unfortunate for him. He does have that demon in Bloom as well, but he did get very close this time, way better than their last set at Shonen War, and he has done it in the past. There are definitely things that Gluto can overcome, and it's just going to be a matter of time. Now let's talk about Bloom, because this guy is just like the best in the world. It is actually unreal how good he is. He is beating some of the best players in Europe with characters that aren't even his main. He went random versus the Schmix tape. He won that out. Versus Tigerdun, he went Luigi the first 3 games. Almost got reversed 3-0, but he did win 2 with Luigi and then 1 with Bayo. Against Curry Governor, he tried out the Samus. It didn't work. Against Luigi, he had a really close set in the winner side of bracket that Luigi did just take. And then once Bloom gets into the loser side, he just goes full tryhard and he owns. He 3-0 Streak. He 3-0s Andres FN, has a really good set with Gluto 3-2s that. 3-0s Luigi in the initial grand finals, and then in the reset gets it 3-2. He's just incredible, and he is throwing away his winner's life. When he is going to be full trying in winner's side, like when let's say Bloom comes to the US or there's another EU major that he has to actually win to prove something, he is going to be such a threat. And I wouldn't be surprised if he win. I wouldn't be surprised if BLOOM4EVA just won every single event he went to in 2023, even if he starts going to these huge majors, because he just looks ahead right now. That's the only way you can put it. He knows what he's doing. He knows what you're doing. He's incredible, and I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. We covered a lot of tournaments this weekend, and we didn't cover every single player, not even close. So if there's anyone that you want to shout out to, please let me know down below. I'll be sure to go over them. Thank you guys for everything. Sport's been absolutely unreal lately, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.